Welcome to Moving Mom and Downsizing Dad, the podcast that prepares you for one of life's toughest yet inevitable moments, stepping in when your parents need you most. Hosted by Spade, a senior real estate specialist with Keller Williams Realty. We'll dive deep into more than just moving. We're talking smart financial planning, making tough decisions with confidence, and strategies to avoid being caught in crisis mode. Join us for real stories, expert insights, and actionable steps to stay ahead of the curve. Now, here's your host, Spade.
Thank you, everyone, for coming back to another episode of Moving Mom and Downsizing Dad. I'm your host, Spade, at Keller Williams Realty right here in San Diego. Now, in this podcast, I help Gen Xers navigate life and our aging parents by bringing you experts to help you make smart decisions to guide your parents as they get older, whether that is to age in place, downsize their home into something smaller, or move into a senior community. Now, today I am super excited because I'm talking to Sandy Isaac. Now, Sandy is a certified specialist in estate planning, trust, and probate law, and a shareholder at Buckhalter Law Firm right here in San Diego. She has extensive experience in wills, trusts, probate, and conservatorships, and she helps families and fiduciaries navigate estate planning with clarity and confidence. Now, Sandy also serves as a court-appointed counsel for frequently speaks at seminars on estate planning topics. Now, in addition to her legal practice, she is also an adjunct professor at the University of San Diego, educating future legal professionals on wills, trusts, and estates. Sandy, thank you so much for being on Moving Mom and Downsizing Dad.
Thank you, Chris, for having me. This is such an important topic, and I'm glad you are as excited as I am to talk about it.
Well, part of the reason I'm super excited is because when somebody has a trust in place, it makes my job a lot easier. Because otherwise we have to go through probate, and that's kind of, a bigger challenge. But we're going to talk about all of that. And I'm just super excited to dive into this topic and the importance of estate planning, because having a plan makes everyone's life easier, right?
Absolutely. I could not agree anymore.
Yeah, right on. Okay, so let's just start basically. First and foremost, how do we know, other than maybe asking our parents, but how do we know if our parents have a will or a trust, and what is the difference between the two? Because there's a big difference.
There is absolutely a big difference, and you'd be surprised how many people don't know that there's a difference. They think that they're synonymous and one and the same, and how they're treated under the law is night and day. Now, they're very similar in that both a will and a trust, you have, the individual deciding where their assets are to go, right? They're in both documents, they name beneficiaries, they name who's going to be in charge of administering the estate, right? In a will, an executor, and a trust, the successor trustee. So in those regards, they're the same, right? You have a document that says, where does my stuff go after I die? How they're treated upon death is very, very different. So most people don't realize that a will is still probated, right? A will is a ticket to probate. Just because someone has a will, dies with a will, you still need the probate court to validate that will. And now, guess what? The family gets a ticket to probate. They get to open a full probate proceeding, the same proceeding that if someone would have died intestate or without a will. So there's virtually very little difference of someone who died with a will or someone who died with no will when it comes to the probate process. Now, a trust is a private agreement, analogous to like a contract. It is a contract that says, I, during my lifetime, am putting certain property in trust to be managed post-mortem by my trustee. It does not require the court to validate that trust, and it is a private administration of someone's estate, whereas probate is public, right? If we have a probate and a will that goes through probate, it's all public record. Everyone knows what you have, what your debts are. Trust is a private administration that only the people that are involved know about it. So those are really the main differences, is how they're treated after death. I can transfer property out of a trust, with a death certificate, whereas in probate, I can transfer it a year later after a court has ordered it. So as from your perspective, your job is much different if you're dealing with a trust or a probate, and to everyone involved, it is significantly different. Um, and your second question is a really great question, because I get that question all the time: is how do I know if mom and dad had a will or trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would hope that parents would share with their family members, but we know that that's not always the case, right? They may have some personal reasons for doing that, and now you have the children that are left with, we don't know what to do if mom or dad had a trust. Now, if they have real estate, reaching out to a real estate professional like you would be a very good first step, because you have tools to check title, right?
Yes.
You can check title and you can
Yes.
say, oh, daughter client, your mom's house is in trust. I see a trust here.
Mm-hmm.
So you could be the first person to tell someone mom or dad had a trust. So now, usually, if it's a trust that's prepared by an attorney, they may have their name on the letterhead, right, on the top of that deed. And then sometimes the family has to be detectives, and one clue will lead to another clue. Now, if we have a will, mom or dad just died with a will, we don't know. It's not recorded anywhere. It's not deposited. You don't go to the county and see if one's there. It really gets into the, boots on the ground, going through the files, anything that you can find in the documents. And unfortunately, the law presumes that a will is void or revoked if it physically cannot be found. So because you can just put it in your shredder, and that is an effective revocation of a will, it becomes extremely challenging to try to find wills if you can't physically find it when someone passes. So trust, you have little, hints through bank accounts in the name of the trust, real estate in the names of the trust. So it's much easier to find and potentially trace. But both are very challenging.
So let's just back up one quick second, because I thought of a question as you were saying it. You said just having a will is a ticket to probate. Let's talk for just a brief second, because I think people need to understand this. This is why it's so important to have a trust. How long does that probate process take from the time they call you and you open up a probate? How long does that take? I think everybody needs to know. This is why
Yeah.
you get a trust, right?
Yes, absolutely. So probably the biggest deterrent, other than the cost of probate, which I'm sure we'll get into later,
Yeah, I was
is
going to ask you
time.
that too.
Yeah, but the time, if someone calls me and I see them that day, the next day, we fill out all the paperwork for probate and I file it right away. It is the fastest, filing ever, right? I file it right away. It's not my delay, right? As soon as I file it with the court, I'm going to get a hearing date. And that hearing date is probably a month from now, 45 days from now. And that's the first time a court's going to review my paperwork. And before then, I have to do a lot of steps. I have to publish with the newspaper. We have to send out notices. But in about 30 to 45 days, the court will approve the petition and order someone to be the administrator or the executor of the estate. We've just started the probate. All that is we got to the starting line.
Yep.
We haven't run the marathon yet. We've
Yep.
just got to the opening gates.
Yep.
And now, by the time we close a probate, which is you get the money, right? When you
Right.
finally get the money to the heirs or the property to the heirs, at minimum, you're talking 9 months is a record pace probate. Typical, it's about 12 to 18 months. In certain counties, Orange County, you may be 18 months to 2 years just because of their backlog. LA County, different counties process things faster, but at minimum, you're looking at being, my client for at least a year.
Yep. Okay. Perfect. And so this is all if you don't have a trust. Let's just, since we brought it up, why don't we talk about the cost? Because the cost is set by the state, is my understanding correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So the cost is set by statute, which means you don't shop around for a cheaper attorney, right?
Yeah.
So whether you come to me in my beautiful office overlooking downtown and the water, or you go to the, solo guy that shops above a donut shop, it
Yep.
doesn't matter.
Yep.
It's set by statute, which means that I get paid based on a percentage of the estate at the close of probate. Now, Chris, I will tell you some really shocking news. Statutory fees are based on the gross value of the estate, not the net value.
Yep.
So if I have $1 million home with an $800,000 mortgage, I still get my statutory fee on the full $1 million. Even if, the proceeds were 150 grand,
Yep.
I'm getting it as if it was a free and clear $1 million, net proceed. So it is, significantly more expensive. I mean, an estate plan is pennies on the dollar, right? You pay $5,000 for a estate plan. I'm just throwing a, round number out there. You're going to pay maybe 40,000 for probate,
Yeah.
of a similar estate.
Yes. So our goal here is to make sure everybody has a trust by the end of this podcast. That's what we want to do, is get Sandy involved to get your trust. But okay, so let's talk about how do you create that living trust? How does that work? What is the steps for that?
Well, the first step is, deciding to do it, right? A lot of my clients, it's been on their to-do list for years. And the number one comment that I get from clients are, oh my gosh, that was so much easier than I thought, right? In our head, we tell ourselves stories about, we'll do this later, we have to do this first. But really, it's just calling up, right, an attorney or getting a recommendation, contacting me, whoever you know or trust, and making an appointment. And typically the process is the attorney will meet with the clients, will gather certain information. Some attorneys do it through like a worksheet, right? I use a worksheet. A lot of my colleagues do, right? To get all your family information, the stuff right? Names, birth dates, addresses, things like that. And then we go over the details of what does your estate look like? What are some of your unique challenges that maybe we need to talk about? But we get the information. Some people are easy, right? I got 2 kids, everything 50-50, easy peasy. Or, yeah. And so we gather the information, and then I prepare the documents, and then I sit down with my client. We review it. We make sure it's exactly what they want. We sign it and notarize in the office, and that's it. It's a very simple process.
Nice. So, let's back up for a second. No, I'm going to skip that question because you already kind of answered it. Okay, let's talk about this. Who should you pick as your trustee? Because, like, for example, my parents, my dad's trust, my younger brother, lives in the same state my father does. I live here in California. we've already agreed that my younger brother, he's there, right? It just makes sense, right? But who should be your trustee in this case?
So that's an excellent question, because most individuals choose their successor trustee based on one of 2 criteria. Who's the oldest, right? They'll just choose by age, or who lives closer, like your dad, Chris, right? You said who lives closer. That makes sense. I would encourage my clients not to choose based on those 2 criteria, which are the most common, but choose based on who has the skills to do this job. Maybe brother who lives right by dad is a nurse, right? And he's excellent at these things, or he's an artist, right? Or he's, something that doesn't really deal with paperwork or legal or real estate. Whereas Chris is all the way in California, but he's a real estate professional and he has the contacts, right?
Hmm.
He can handle paperwork. So what I do is I sit down and I talk about who's in someone's family, and we talk about what does the job of a trustee entail, right? What do they have to do? And then which child has the skills really to do that job? Because the biggest decision is really the trustee, because that could steer the ship, down or up.
Well, what if, in this scenario, just throw it out there, what if somebody does not have children, or they don't really think either one of their children is responsible? What would you recommend in a case like that?
And that is common, right? Sometimes clients don't want to put, even if they had a responsible child, they don't want their children to be, one of them be the boss or have authority over the other, or their children are just really not good choices, right? They love their children, they want their children to receive the benefits of their estate, but they recognize that their children are really not capable of doing this job.
Right.
Or they don't have someone in their family, right? They don't have children, they don't have family members that really, have those skills. Maybe there's a language barrier, right? I deal with a lot of Latin American clients, and
Okay.
sometimes just the language or understanding how the system works here is not a good fit. So what we do in those situations is most attorneys recommend private fiduciaries, right? Private professional fiduciaries, that is their job. They're professional trustees. They know what to do. They are licensed. They're bonded, right? They will be neutral. They're not going to pick a side because, sometimes when you get siblings, you get all this childhood, things that come up, right? Well, mom loves you more because they bought you a
Yep.
car when you graduated and I didn't get a car.
Yep.
My parents tell me my family says that to me because I'm the only one of my four siblings that got a car, paid for by my parents. And, we're all in our 40s and 50s and they're still bringing up the car.
Were you the youngest? Is that why?
I'm sorry?
Were you the youngest? Is that
Yes,
why?
of
That's
course.
why. Okay, I get it. You're the youngest.
All these things come up, right? And sometimes the best person is the neutral, right? Um, so we discuss private professional fiduciaries, right? They get paid from a percentage of, they get paid typically hourly from the estate. So it's not like you have to pay them in advance.
Okay.
Or is there someone outside the family, right? A trusted uncle or another friend, a good family friend, right? So we explore the different options. Last options that we explore is professional fiduciaries like banks, right? Trust companies. There's a lot of trust companies within banks or their own, separate trust companies. So sometimes we'll explore those for higher net worth clients.
And so, just to be clear, they're the ones that are signing on behalf of the trust, like selling a house or, signing checks, those types of things, correct?
Absolutely. That is their job, is the taxes of the estate, collecting all the assets, the money, paying all the bills and debts, distributing, selling real estates, all of that. Mhm.
Okay, awesome. Um, so we've talked about the benefits of the living trust. This really avoids probate. That's a big thing. Are there any drawbacks to having a trust?
I mean, initial startup costs, right?
Okay.
It's with probate, it's not your problem, right? By definition, you're dead, and it's a problem for your loved ones and your heirs. Whereas a trust, I mean, you have to pay for it. So, that's a drawback for some, is that, it's not, a cup of coffee, right? But it's not
Right.
the price of a car. So, that could be a drawback. And for some people, it's confronting those realities, right? Confronting mortality
Right.
for some is very hard. Culturally, for some people, that's very difficult. You don't talk about these things, or you have to confront your feelings about your family, right? You have to confront that, you have to tell your attorney that your daughter has a substance abuse issue,
Yeah.
right? So it's or, all these situations that are very emotional and very private. And often we don't like to talk about these, so it's uncomfortable. So that's a drawback for many, is just being uncomfortable for a little time, depending on your family. But other than that, Chris, it's one of the few things in life that almost all benefit and very little drawback.
Let me ask you a question. Let's say, for example, you've got a parent and they maybe have a will or a trust, either or you'll explain to us what the differences are because I really don't. But what if they can't make decisions for themselves? Like, for example, maybe they've been diagnosed with dementia, for example, or they have early signs of Alzheimer's, stuff like that. What happens in those cases, and what can we do to be um, proactive there?
Well, statistically, 50% of Americans will become incapacitated at some point before their death, right? And we don't know if it's a long-term incapacity, right? You mentioned a couple cognitive, factors, right? Dementia, Alzheimer's, and those individuals with those diagnoses, it's a progressive disease. They can live for years with diminished or lacking capacity, right? Or you can have a short-term capacity, but I mean, it's pretty good odds that, you will be incapacitated at some point before you pass. Now, a good estate planning attorney and a well-rounded estate plan is going to have incapacity planning documents.
Okay.
So you're going to have, as part of the estate plan, so if we have a trust-based estate plan, we're also going to have other documents or ancillary documents. Specifically, to assist with incapacity, we're going to have financial durable power of attorneys, and we're going to have advanced healthcare directives. So whereas the trust and wills are the, what happens when you die documents, so to speak, post death, the advanced healthcare directive and financial power of attorneys are our living documents, right? If mom becomes incapacitated, then that financial power of attorney will say, son Chris can step in and manage her finances, pay her bills, pay her taxes, right? Maybe mom has to go to assisted living, and really it's her home that's the biggest asset. Son Chris can sign to sell the home,
Mm-hmm.
hire a realtor, just like if it was mom. Um, the healthcare directive is, son can go in and make decisions for mom, take her to the doctor, get her treatment when she can't consent or is unable to make those decisions. Um, Unfortunately, if someone doesn't have those incapacity documents, the alternative is we're back to court with conservatorships. And conservatorship is like a living probate almost,
Okay.
whereas someone is appointed to manage the affairs, make decisions for someone who's incapacitated. And it's very expensive, and it's for the life of that individual. So it's not like a one petition that's done in a year. It's like probate for the rest of that person's life, because the court has to supervise that incapacitated person's life because they didn't plan.
So the message right now, plan. That's your message.
Yes, absolutely.
That's what I'm getting. Um, let's um let's switch gears a little bit. Because I get this question a lot, and I always refer people, and maybe you can help us answer it. Will we have to pay any taxes when parents pass away? What does that look like? Hmm. Hmm. Yes. Hmm. Yep. That's his $3 million house. Yeah. 35, 40. Yeah. Oh, that's the big one. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Right. 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 Hmm. Hmm. A huge tax bill. Yeah. Yeah. That's where you talk to a tax professional like me and Lacey on. Talk to her because she can lay out the plan for you. Yeah. It's not a one person. Yeah. Yeah. It's not just a one person job. Um, So let's big question. This is the big question because I'm sure you've seen this many, many times. What happens? You have this estate plan or you're going to probate, and what happens if the family doesn't agree after mom and dad go? What happens there? Because I'm sure you've got some really good stories. Yeah, yeah. Mhm. Oh, wow. Mhm. Mhm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. 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 So even a trust can go to court if it makes your life easier, but it still can go to court. Mhm. Right. Yeah. 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 That makes sense. Sandy, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you think is important that everybody listening should know? Right. Nope. Yeah. 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 Oh, you better. Yeah, you better. You bet. I have dogs. I know exactly who gets my dogs if something happens to me and my husband. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Correct. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Sandy, I appreciate you so much. Thank you. And if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to get in touch with you?
The best way would be give me a call. My lovely assistant will be happy to schedule some time, and I can be reached directly at 619-219-8073 or email me. And that's my first initial last name, so SISAAC at Buchalter, and that's BUCHALTER.com.
Sandy, thank you so much. I have learned I knew a lot of the answers to the questions I was asking you, but I learned a lot of stuff too, and I can't wait for people to be listening to this because I think that this is such an important topic more than anything else. Estate planning is probably one of the number one things people need to do.
I absolutely agree with you. So I appreciate you giving me time and this platform to share and educate people.
Thank you so much. Oh, and one last thing. You can do estate planning for anyone in California, correct? It doesn't just have to be San Diego?
Absolutely. I have a lot of clients that are throughout the state. I appear at different courts throughout the state. I have clients that have real estate in California but are international. Help those. If you're in a different state, I likely have a partner that is able to practice in that jurisdiction, or my office, my firm may have an office in those states. So think of me as a resource. Even if I can't help you, I typically can point someone in the right direction.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sandy Isaac, attorney extraordinaire. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.